In this video, I want to talk about data and analytics. Yes, data again. You have probably heard the expression data is the new oil. Well, the analogy has its limitations, but it strikes a point. Whatever digital product or service you are building today, it is ultimately relying on data. In Module 3, we have defined big data and discussed the areas of applications it has, and even some of its challenges. In this video, I want to focus on how a company can actually use the data to create value. What capabilities does it need? What technology? Where should it start? And this is often the hardest part. Last year, I was discussing with the head of a customer analytics department. She was very excited that they were investing in a huge, brand new data and analytics infrastructure. The first question that I had was, what would you do in the first couple of months with this infrastructure to have a full payback on your investment? From what I have seen, it is not the technology infrastructure that makes or breaks data and analytics capabilities. Yes, a company needs technology and needs know-how to collect, store, and analyze data, but this can be scaled up gradually or even be outsourced relatively easily. The key is to start with a clear business objective, a clear vision of what the company wants to achieve. This is actually the first of 4 domains you need to think about when building data and analytics capabilities. The second one is data usage. How is the ambition translated into tangible use cases? The next domain to tackle is data engine. What capabilities does a company need in order to implement those use cases? And last but not least, a company needs to take into account its full data ecosystem. Who beyond the company itself can support the development of those capabilities? Let me walk you through those 4 domains in a bit more details. The way I would like to do this is the following. For each domain, I will share with you some popular myths, the ones I have heard from clients, friends, or the press, and then I'll tell you my view on each of them. All right, let's start. The first myth is deeply anchored in many companies. Big data is a technology question. And that's not true. In the last few years, I have gathered numerous horror stories about lost investments in Hadoop platforms or data lakes. Hundreds of millions, actually sometimes north of $1 billion invested without a business objective in mind. As a result, all thrown out. Let me walk you through those 4 domains in a bit more details. The way I would like to do this is the following. For each domain, I will share with you some popular myths, the ones I have heard from clients, friends, or the press, and then I'll tell you my view on each of them. All right, let's start. The first myth is deeply anchored in many companies. Big data is a technology question. And that's not true. In the last few years, I have gathered numerous horror stories about lost investments in Hadoop platforms or data lakes. Hundreds of millions, actually sometimes north of $1 billion invested without a business objective in mind. As a result, all thrown out and restarted from scratch. So, if you see that a company's data and analytics vision is about getting the latest and greatest technology in town, you know the risks. The vision doesn't need to be as ambitious as Google's organizing the world's data, but it needs to resonate with your business objective, your business outcome. Let's now move to data usage myths. The first one is what I would call the myth of gut feel. This is one of the cultural hurdles to using data as a decision-making tool. Let me be clear, I don't deny that sometimes business leaders can have strong intuition or be visionary figures in their markets. There's even some interesting neuroscience research behind this. But you can't run all departments and take all decisions based on everyone's intuition. And you certainly shouldn't do it when it's a critical decision. Let me give you another horror story. Ron Johnson, former senior vice president of retail operations at Apple, he became CEO of JCPenney in 2011. He very quickly implemented a no discount strategy based on his gut feel. His colleagues suggested to test it in few stores before rolling it out, but it didn't happen. It turned out his gut feel was fundamentally wrong, and JCPenney shares have declined 51%. To create the right use cases for data usage, it is necessary to promote a data-driven culture in the first place. The second usage myth is one we have discussed with Joan Rose in Module 3. It's about trust. And it's a myth you can hear in large companies, in startups, and in the media. Data privacy is a problem for the old generation.
Chị ơi, ra đóng cái cửa này lại cho ông ấy.
Well, privacy is actually a key issue for all generations. And it's not because a teenager is more comfortable posting photos on Instagram that he doesn't care how those photos are being
Cửa đây
used.
đóng chưa? Cửa đây đóng chưa?
And when we look at multiple surveys across different countries, we see that there is less variation between generations than types of data. People are more sensitive to privacy of their healthcare records than they are to their buying habits. Overall, companies who want to be able to collect and use their customers' data should protect against misuse, regardless of which generation or which group of people they are targeting. Let's now talk about the data engine, about technology solutions, data gathering, skills required, and the link to business processes. Data and analytics technology has seen the rise of many buzzwords in the last few years. Hadoop platforms or in-memory analytics became so trendy that some managers started thinking that they will replace all existing infrastructure. Well, planes didn't replace cars because they both answer different trade-offs. Hadoop or data lakes will not replace data warehouses because the latter are still effective for structured data where parallel processing is not needed. And in general, we shouldn't be looking at technology solutions from the novelty lens. Newness and lack of maturity, if anything, come with certain risks. What is important is the trade-off between the functionalities you need and the cost you're willing to pay. On the data side, I often hear statements like, I have a B2B business, or I am in support function. I'm not as lucky as those businesses with tons of end customer data. This is clearly a myth. Big data has numerous applications, valuable applications in operation analytics, like procurement optimization, predictive maintenance, logistics optimizations, or others. A couple of years ago, we did a warehouse network optimization for a procurement department in Southeast Asia. It led to 20% savings on their logistics operations with no additional CapEx investment. The third myth in data engine is about people. I like to call it the perpetual search of data scientist unicorns. That one person that will combine deep IT know-how, superior analytics skills, great business expertise, and a strong ability to influence decision-making. I can tell you those people are very rare. So don't build all your hopes on them. Setting up a strong team, including all different skills is the way to make up for missing unicorns. Especially if close collaboration within the team is ensured through an agile way of working. You have heard about that from Sonia in the previous video. There's one last myth on data engine that I want to share with you. It goes something like this. Once you see the value of data and analytics, change will happen. The reality is, although proof of value is a critical component, it is not sufficient to make change happen. I remember when we helped a telecommunication company build a data-driven channel optimization capability, the proof of value took a couple of months. Sales growth actually increased by 20 percentage points. But to make this impact sustainable, it took a few more months to create the new central team to ensure that it has the right interfaces with stores operation teams and reseller management teams, and to integrate the new approach to the company's decision-making process. And this was the key. Data and analytics should not live in silos. They should be embedded in the daily business operations. There are two more myths I want to share with you on the fourth domain, the data ecosystem. The first is about this tendency to only trust what is homemade. The belief that a company should do everything by itself. The truth is, it's much more efficient to rely on a wider data ecosystem for both data exchanges and analytics support. There's a great story here from NASA, the space agency. They wanted to develop an accurate prediction model for solar particle events, SPEs. And they have tried for more than 40 years with limited success. In 2010, they had the brilliant idea to crowdsource a better predictive model. They found a solution within 3 months. And that solution was 50% better than their existing model at a cost of $30,000. NASA is not the only one. Netflix did the same thing a few years ago to improve their recommender system. Now, the last myth I want to discuss says that it is hard to openly share data beyond your organization boundaries. Okay, well, this is not fully a myth, not yet at least. It is hard to build the right relationship framework that allows seamless sharing of data. We know it creates disproportionately more value when you can correlate different sources of data to find new and useful patterns. This has encouraged many governments to adopt this open data culture. But if the data is part of your business competitive advantage, when you are building an AI capability, for example, then it is very hard to defend full openness. Companies willing to mutually share data are usually getting around this hurdle by creating joint ventures, as an example. There are also some ongoing initiatives in Singapore, for example, to build data marketplaces, platforms to facilitate discovery and exchange of data sources between industry players. What should you take away from all those real life stories? A company needs to start its data and analytics journey with a clear vision, closely linked to its business priorities. The vision needs to translate into tangible use cases that can serve as a compelling proof of value. Big data does not need magical capabilities. Teams can be created with the right combination of skills to replace a data scientist unicorn, for example. Businesses shouldn't feel obliged to do everything in-house. They should partner with their ecosystem to enrich both data sources and analytics capabilities.
Hi, my name is Yael Grushka-Kakane. I'm an associate professor at the Darden School of Business, one of Mike's colleagues. I'm here to tell you about a big data transformation study that I conducted with a team of co-authors with Heathrow Airport and Eurocontrol. Eurocontrol is the body in charge of the European airspace, similar to the FAA in the US. Over the years, Eurocontrol have had quite a big challenge on their hands. All the different systems in Europe related to the airspace are quite fragmented. Different countries have different airports and airlines that operate in different languages and use different systems. Eurocontrol has a vision. Their vision is for a single European sky for 2025. They are trying to improve the efficiency, the safety, and the flexibility of the system across the entire airspace. In order to do that, one of their initiatives is to work with the airports to form what's called an operations center, or the acronym is an Airport Operations Center, or APOC. The vision is that if each airport positioned all of the different stakeholders in one big room, having all of their screens and their data in one central location and the key decision makers all in that room, there could be huge efficiency gains to the airport and to all the different stakeholders and players in the airspace. One of the first APOCs, one of the first operation centers that were set up in Europe was in Heathrow Airport. Heathrow Airport, just southwest of London, is one of the busiest airports in Europe and in the world in general. It has over 75 million passengers a year, 5 terminals, 2 runways, and flying to 250 destinations. 24 million of those passengers, transferring passengers, passengers that land at Heathrow but then fly out of Heathrow to a different destination. The vision that Eurocontrol had, which they approached myself and my team, was a vision around how big data got used in the APOC, in this center, with all the different stakeholders. Their vision for the big data was that we could use the data that got stored in all the different systems, the systems that the security managers had, the systems that the airlines, that the baggage control systems had. If I could coordinate and look at all the different data, and we could look at it in real time, could there be efficiency gains for how the stakeholders interacted and how decision-making was made? Ultimately, the goal of Eurocontrol and of Heathrow specifically was happier passengers that all find their bags, that arrive and depart on time. And the big question in the vision was, could we use the data and big data to achieve that? Once we got on board and we started to have these conversations, we knew that in order to nail it down and to actually get to something that we could implement, we needed to identify how data got used. What was the usage of the data across the organization, across the entire airport? Well, data gets used in many different ways at Heathrow. Data gets used to help with baggage flow. Data gets used to help allocate airplanes to different stands, depending on when they arrive, where they're coming from, and where they're headed towards. Data gets used to help with passengers flow across the organization in the airport. Specifically, we were curious to see how we could use data to better anticipate and better forecast the connection journey or the connecting journey of transferring passengers. Could we use data from the various systems to understand how many passengers are going to be connecting at a given moment, how much time it's going to take them to flow through the airport? Will they miss their connecting flights? And are we going to have problems at the security lines with big number of passengers arriving at the same time? And so we focused our usage and our attention for this project on how data gets used and how data can transform the actual connecting journey of passengers at Heathrow Airport. Once we identified that that was the usage we were focusing on, we then started to break down the different components of the engines. What are the capabilities that we need to identify? Where does the technology lie? What technology gets used? What data gets stored? And is it this data that can be useful in thinking about these transferring passengers? Who are the people and the decision makers and the organizations involved along the process? For instance, some of the people could be the people in charge of the security lines related to immigration. Some of the people involved in the organizations involved were all those related to the transportation within the airport, such as buses and the different trolleys that sometimes help you nip around the airport if you're really in a hurry. We had to identify the processes. In this case, it was the actual passenger journey from A to B. What does a passenger do when they land all the way to the next gate as they're transferring through Heathrow Airport? What are the different checkpoints that they hit? And could we identify opportunities for improvement and opportunities for improved flow at each one of those points throughout the process? That was the engine. While we did this, and this was the bulk of our time and the bulk of this project, was really breaking it down and identifying that there are actually some struggles and some non-trivial components to this engine. Data gets stored in many different systems. Over 6 or 7 different databases house pieces of the information that we needed to track a passenger from when it's still in the air on an airplane approaching the airport to when it gets to its final gate and about to board for its destination. Tracking a passenger throughout the process and making sure that they actually arrive where they need to be on time was a hugely hard task. And we realized that the systems had different information that didn't always either agree, meaning inconsistencies, or we didn't always have the information in real time the way that we needed it on the spot to make decisions. It turned out that the key or the secret to our success and the key to helping us crack this project was actually in the baggage information. The baggage detail and the data that got stored in the baggage handling system related an individual passenger to a seat on an inbound flight and told us something about their destination and helped us track the progress and translate the different information from one system to the next. We used the information, we used over 3.7 million records of passengers coming into Heathrow, and we came up with a model that told us something new about what predicts and what influences a transferring passenger's connection time. For instance, and some of you may know this actually intuitively, it turns out that where you sit on an airplane, what class your ticket is, and how close you are to the front affects how long it will take you to get through the process. It also makes a difference what kind of airplane you're on, if it's a small or a wide airplane, where you get to stand in the airport. How often have you actually been on an airplane, you see that you're running low on time, and you tell yourself, oh, with my luck, my airplane is going to get to the furthest gate and I'm going to have to run all the way to the other end of the airport. Well, we can prove, and we proved with our model, that this is true and that where the airplane gets, what stand it gets, what gate it gets allocated to, where it's coming from, where the passenger is seated, if a passenger is traveling on their own or with a group, all of these are factors that affect the connection time. Using all of this information, we can build models, we can build different profiles for passengers and put them into a big engine that allow the decision makers to come up with predictions as to how many passengers are going to hit different key points within the airport. As we step back, and we did some testing, we did some live trials, and we recognized and we proved to ourselves that our system is fairly good at coming up with predictive distributions and telling us something about those connection times. We stepped back and we reflected and we told ourselves what is required from the entire APOC, and more than that, the entire ecosystem around the airport activity. What is required for this data to be utilized on a regular basis? What kind of data ecosystem are we looking for, are we in need for, in order for this system and our model to be used on a regular basis and for decisions to be improved and for the decisions to rely on this data on a regular basis? The ecosystem had to do with the different stakeholders. We had to go back to the airlines. We had to talk with them about their processes around real-time data sharing. We had to encourage them to be more transparent with each other, to go back even to the airplane manufacturers to come up with software systems that would support this type of real-time communication, to store the data better, and to be open and transparent with all the different stakeholders in the APOC, and to coordinate upfront as to how the data is going to get recorded in order for us to feed it into our model and then use it on a regular basis. What I saw that day at Heathrow and what I've been seeing since and throughout my conversations with them is there's a lot of hope and a lot of belief that this use of data will transform the way that they operate and communicate with each other. No longer do they see themselves as a fragmented set of stakeholders that are being forced to share a single room. They are actually under the impression, and they believe that they are now operating as one, with the idea that data gets tracked throughout the process and they as stakeholders can follow it and track it throughout. And who will benefit from this? Everybody, from the passenger to the airlines, the airports, and globally, the entire airspace.
More than a decade ago, writer Nicholas Carr caused a stir with a Harvard Business Review article titled, "IT Doesn't Matter." He argued that as cost falls for infrastructural technology such as the computer and the internet, the technologies would become widely available commodities, just like railroads, electricity, and telephone. Once a technology is ubiquitous and available to all, when it is neither scarce nor proprietary, it no longer confers a lasting competitive advantage. Although we can debate when technology by itself is a competitive advantage and for how long it would remain, I would argue that it has now become a critical part of many companies' competitive advantage. Just look at companies like Airbnb, Amazon, or Alibaba. Their success is to a large extent enabled by their technology platform that can be quickly scaled up or down, that is highly efficient, and that can deliver new products or services in very short cycles. To keep up with those digital innovators, companies continue to invest in technology platforms. In fact, in most industries, the growth of IT investment has surpassed sales growth. And if you put together the worldwide corporate IT spending, including for hardware, software, data centers, networks, and staff, it is nearly $6 trillion per year. But despite those high investments, I've seen so many companies fail in implementing IT projects. A health services company, for example, invested $500 million in a data warehousing solution for patients' data. At the end, they were not able to operationalize the system due to a mismatch between the IT capabilities and the regulatory constraint. Another European retail energy provider even spent $1.5 billion on an integrated business intelligence, CRM, product management, and billing system, but failed to implement it as the whole migration project was too complex and too large to execute without disrupting the business continuity. Often, those failures are due to one major reason, something that we have already discussed in the previous video on data analytics. Do you remember? Companies starting with a technology rather than with a business question. What do I want to achieve? What is the business purpose behind the investment? In my years of experience, I've seen the technology function go through ups and downs. Today, given its criticality for the business, the Chief Information Officer, CIO, is likely to be on the CEO's speed dial. He or she is the backbone of any digital transformation program. So, what is a digital-ready tech function? You would ideally want an IT team that partners with the business, that can link the investment needed to revenue opportunity or increase efficiency. But probably most importantly, a team that can deliver at a much higher speed than usual. One that allows you to launch software updates every couple of weeks rather than twice a year in the old ways. This sounds obvious in theory. However, many companies are constrained by their existing environment and face legacy challenges that make it hard to adopt the digital speed. Let me give you first a practical answer here. If you want to make it work, managing your legacy as well as building new digital capabilities, you need to run a two-speed IT. What is a two-speed IT? It refers to two different types of IT teams: the industrial speed team and the digital speed team. These two IT teams coexist within the company, but with a different focus area. The industrial speed team focuses on mature operations within the core of the business. This would be like the ERP that manages the logistic operations, or the core banking system for a financial institution, or OSS, BSS for a telecommunication company. The digital speed team deals with emergent, short lifetime projects building on fast-changing technologies. It enables and drives a company's digital agenda. It includes building customer-facing apps or experimenting with less mature technologies like blockchain or artificial intelligence. So now, let us take a closer look at how the two teams work. The industrial speed team is basically working like the typical traditional IT department. It typically follows the waterfall approach, where development flows sequentially from conception to testing, with separate teams taking over at each phase. It usually builds on technology with long life cycle.
88 triệu liều à? Xong á?
In terms of people,
Chứ
industrial
bố
speed
vẫn thừa dưới 88.
requires specialized experts that
Đấy,
have
88
narrow
triệu
and
người
clear
rồi.
tasks. A business analyst to define the requirements, a developer for the technical implementation,
Hướng á?
etc., etc.
Đón ra người ấy tiêm á?
Within the organization, industrial speed type work is generally siloed, but it works well
Như vậy chứ cô
for a
Liên.
relatively predictable needs and stable technology environment. The digital speed team, on the other hand, works in an agile manner through short interactions. In terms of people, here, you need a mixed variety of profile, not only from technical background, but also from business, customer research, and from design background. This collaboration enables quick response to change, fast integration of customer feedback, response to competitors' move, or to an evolving regulatory system. You might be thinking, why not encourage everyone to go at digital speed all at once? Well, again, I don't disagree with the ambition, but this is a pragmatic response for most incumbent players to start the journey. The goal is a full agile at scale, like we have described in the previous videos. Most incumbents have a legacy technology platform built over multiple years, as work was still highly predictable and teams functionally organized. This is what makes an immediate technology big bang unrealistic. Having two-speed provide a second gear, which help businesses get started, but this also comes with its own challenges. Who would you rather work for? The industrial team or the digital team? Many talented individuals have a preference for the faster speed. This makes harder and harder for the industrial team to attract and retain talent, which further widens the gap between both the speeds. Also, I've often seen the slowest common denominator ends up driving cycle time when both ITs need to work together. Therefore, the ultimate goal for a company is to drive convergence to the higher speed. A technology function that is aligned with the business need at any time, that is flexible, efficient, and that can deliver in very short agile cycle. So when I discuss the move from purely industrial speed to digital speed with my clients, they want to know, how can we get there? How can we get our technology agenda to be agile? My answer is to think beyond the tech function from the start. If you want to effectively change the IT team's way of working, start by blending it with the business. And make Agile at Scale a company-wide agenda where everyone needs to shift their mindset. To go deeper on this, check out our conversation with Martin, our senior partner from BCG Amsterdam office, on the 7 core elements you need to succeed in such a large-scale transformation. What should you take away from this video? A digital-ready technology function is required to keep up with new customer expectation and fast product delivery cycle of digital innovators. As many companies have to continue managing their legacy system, a second gear might be required to drive a separate digital speed execution in parallel. The ultimate goal is to converge both execution speed in the technology function together with the business side into a single unified operating model. That is what Agile at Scale allows.
We are getting deeper and deeper into our digital transformation framework building blocks. And we've talked about technology, a very important function. Today, I'm very happy to have with us Stefan Mohr. Stefan is a senior partner in our Sydney office. He's also the head of our Technology Advantage office in Asia Pacific. Stefan, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So Stefan, let me ask you a first question that's probably something that people wonder about quite a lot those last couple of years. We talk about digital transformation a lot. What is the role of the technology function in such a digital transformation?
In 2003, an article made the rounds in the IT community and created a big stir. The main point of the article was IT doesn't matter. Go forward 15 years, and I would say technology and data matters more than ever. What is probably true is that a lot of IT has been commoditized. And many of the basic services, take processing services, storage services, transmission services, are more of a utility today. However, when you think about other parts of technology and data, they are really playing a value-adding role a value-adding role to the business, to the point where when you listen to company leaders, regardless of industry, they often think and talk about themselves as a technology company. And therefore, for me, the corollary of that really then is that the technology function plays an enormously important role. And when we think about technology and the role, and data and the role it plays to change our products and services, often they have technology and data embedded in them, or they are an add-on that creates real value, or the role of technology and data to streamline our processes, make them simpler, more convenient for customers, and cheaper as well. So in a nutshell, I think the technology function is really important in today's companies.
So how does a tech function organize to fulfill that new role in the new business world?
I think in many ways, structure actually doesn't matter as much. What I think is really more important is the mindset. It's the capabilities. It's the ways of working. Let me highlight sort of 3 points that I think are critical as we move forward. One is really business alignment. Business alignment is the role of the technology function in helping business leaders think what existing technologies and technologies that are on the
We're getting deeper and deeper into our digital transformation framework.
technologies that are on the horizon can do for them. It's not something that business leaders will know about themselves. It's something where technology will help them reimagine their products and services, help them think about how they can reinvent processes through the use of technology and data. But it's not only at these initial stages when we inform strategies, when we inform investment priorities. It's also business alignment in the way we deliver, because we need to have a much closer integration between business and IT. It always sends down shivers, sends shivers down my back when I hear we are writing a business requirements document, we give it to IT, and then IT goes away and delivers it. In today's world, we need to work, hand in hand. We need to work very closely together to really evolve these priorities more incrementally. So what we deliver in the end will really meet the business need. The second point is, which is related, is around being more agile. We need to move at speed in an environment that is less predictable than it used to be. So some of the traditional ways of working, which were more the waterfall model, they are not right anymore today. We need to have a second gear, a much faster speed. And that means the way we organize ourselves in integrated teams, the way we deliver these projects in incremental sort of test and learn approaches, that is really essential today. And the last point around the IT function really is around providing equal emphasis on technology and data. I would still observe there is more emphasis on technology, and data is the forgotten asset. But as we move forward, data will become more and more important, and we need to think, how do we build the capabilities necessary to take really advantage of that asset? Once structural point I want to make, however, given the importance of technology, what I think is really important that IT is represented at the top tables, that we do have a voice at the executive level, whether it's at the group level, but also in each of the business units. Because only then will we be able to have these types of conversations, to have the right engagement between technology and the business.
And Stefan, I know you have been leading in the last few years a reorganization to a technology function in one of our mining clients. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you ran this and what were the critical steps, the critical elements to get it to a success?
Sure. I work actually with quite a few companies on helping IT functions get ready for the digital age. One observation I would have is when you look at services industries, financial services, telecommunications, etc., they have made some of the changes earlier than manufacturing companies because the forces of digital disruptions were on them a lot earlier. But manufacturing companies are catching up very, very quickly as well. And the mining company you mentioned that I've been working with, they had done a really good job in terms of setting up the basic IT infrastructure. It's a global company. They globalized services. They made them more robust, a lot cheaper. And it was all the traditional IT infrastructure services plus having a very strong global ERP system to look after functions such as finance and HR, etc. But where they were struggling with were how do we now take that next step? How do we make technology a business enabler? And when you listen to the business, it was, we want more from IT. For example, how do we use data a lot better to do predictive maintenance in our various business units? The second challenge they were facing was being a manufacturing company. You not only have IT, you also have operations technology. And a lot of the operations technology is now becoming IT enabled. And all of a sudden, these pieces of equipment are exposed to the same vulnerabilities, cybersecurity risks as IT systems. But the disciplines within the operations technology functions were not the same. So how could we bring some of those really good disciplines into this part of the business? And the third challenge, and again related to it, was really around data. Especially being a manufacturing company, some of the equipment being IT enabled, there's a lot more machine data that you can leverage. But that data was not being used at all. Like, we did a great job having storage solutions, but we didn't address data as an asset. And the business was really screaming for how can we get more value from it. So what did we do? There's still work in progress, things are going on, but when you want more technology or business value from technology, as I mentioned before, we needed to put IT at the top table with the business to have these types of conversations. So we installed the CIO in each of the business units at the executive leadership level. We then rethought how technology contributed to the strategic planning process. They were traditionally a recipient of strategic priorities, but now they are much more engaged up front to help the business think through how they can take advantage of some of these technology opportunities. We also helped to share some of the great examples of projects that were created in one business unit and leverage them across business units. That wasn't visible before at all. And just by being able to say, look, what we do here might also be applicable over there, how can we share that a lot more? A very simple thing, but a very effective thing. The second on IT and OT, we created much tighter integration between IT and OT. And one specific recommendation was to make the IT cybersecurity function also responsible for OT cybersecurity. And lastly, on the data side, as I mentioned, was not really treated as an asset. And when you looked around the organization, you couldn't find a lot of people that really understood how to create value from data, because here it was a massive upskilling program, recruiting external talent, but also building some of the internal skills. So that helped them really to make one step further towards technology creating business value. As I said, it's still work in progress, but I'm very hopeful they will move further ahead and really being able to leverage technology and data a lot better.
Thank you, Stefan. And if anything is a rebuttal for the IT doesn't matter motto, this one is definitely one of them. Thank you, Stefan.
Thank you very much.
Why did the iPhone win over BlackBerry? When I started my career, BlackBerry was still the default phone for business use. It was secure, had a large screen, a full keyboard, all what a young associate can dream of. In fact, until 2010, BlackBerry still had around 20% market share. But as you know, it collapsed very quickly to become almost negligible today. So the question again is, why? Of course, like any complex enough business phenomena, this has multiple reasons. Technological, BlackBerry didn't shift fast enough to touch screen. Commercial, maybe, BlackBerry was too complacent at the start when Apple was not interested in the professionals market. But there was one reason more strategic in nature. RIM, the manufacturer behind the BlackBerry, was still competing as a single company, while Apple was not coming to battle alone. Think about it. How many different organizations make your experience with the iPhone what it is? First of all, you have the telecommunication company that provides you with the connectivity and that probably have subsidized the iPhone more than the BlackBerry. Then you have the device itself, designed by Apple, but where the Gorilla Glass is coming from Corning and the assembly is done in different Asian manufacturers. Then you have the apps, built by a variety of developers ranging from the passionate teenager in his garage to full-fledged companies. And the list goes on with artists on iTunes, banks on Apple Pay, reseller stores. BlackBerry was not defeated by the touchscreen device. It was defeated by a full ecosystem that provided an integrated experience. This is also how Amazon Kindle outperformed Sony's e-reader. Amazon leveraged its partners to launch 88,000 ebooks ready for download from basically day one. Those are all examples that part of the value generated by a business can increasingly reside outside of the business organization itself. To illustrate this more, let's go back to 2012. When Instagram was acquired by Facebook for $1 billion, it had 13 employees. 13, 1-3. The value of the business didn't come from how much work can be done by this group of people, but from the community of users they have built over time. 30 million people around the world that were willing to produce daily content and put it on Instagram servers for free. In a similar way, part of Uber's value comes from the ecosystem of users, drivers, and cars. And part of eBay or Alibaba's value comes from the ecosystem of sellers and buyers willing to trust the service. Irrespective of your industry today, this notion of ecosystem is critical to understand. What exactly is a business ecosystem? The phrase was used since the 90s, but the idea was not new at all. You can think of it as a network of organizations and individuals exchanging information and goods to create certain value. In its simplest form, an ecosystem can be composed of a supplier, a manufacturer, and a customer, like in a value chain. Between those players, you have an exchange of goods and services, as well as an exchange of information. For example, Walmart and its supplier, Procter & Gamble, exchange merchandise, but they also share information about customer demand in order, for example, to optimize inventory levels. In practice, though, an ecosystem is a bit more complex. The manufacturer can have multiple suppliers who have suppliers of their own, and customers can be distributors who interface with other retailers before reaching different communities of end users. We have seen in Module 1 how the drop in transaction cost has caused the value chain links to become looser, and the topology of the network became more complex as the players can interact more fluidly with each other. In certain industries, this had led to the stack structure that we have already discussed. This is a specific kind of ecosystem where innovative players at the top of the stack can fail without impacting the scale players at the bottom. In other industries, the ecosystem adopted different forms, with some players acting as dominant hubs or orchestrators, while others were very independent. Some other players succeeded in crossing many industry verticals, acting as enabling platforms, while others remained specialized. Lastly, the ecosystem contributors are not limited to the traditional value chain roles. End customers, for example, can also be producers. This is our Instagram example. Suppliers and distributors can also be product development partners. And even governments or non-profit organizations can be seen as industry enablers or advocates. So, if you are a company, how exactly can you leverage this diversity to create more value? The first step is a change in mindset. While in traditional businesses, we used to think of what is outside the company as forces against the creation of value, competitors, substitution agents, strong suppliers, etc. Today, we see more fluid forms of relationships emerging. You would have certainly heard the words co-petition, a mix of cooperation and competition. This requires a higher level of openness compared to traditional organizations. Some cities, like Singapore or Amsterdam, have done a great job in this, opening up their databases and preparing standard development kits for entrepreneurs to create new services. After the change in mindset, companies need to find the right partners to ensure a successful ecosystem. If you look at a stack-based industry, there are basically three main ways of partnering. Companies can partner horizontally, for example, with competitors, vertically, with their suppliers and customers, or they can partner with a company outside of their industry stack. Let me give you some examples. Horizontal partnerships are usually used to solve capacity constraints or to mutualize risks. A good example here is the joint venture recently formed by BMW, Daimler, Ford, and Volkswagen. Their objective is to build a high-power charging network for electric vehicles across Europe. Think of it as if they are creating a new enabling layer in their industry stack, but at a scale that none of the individual players would have reached. The vertical partnerships can either be up or down the value chain. They are relatively more common, but they have a variation that digital technology has accelerated: partnership with end users. We have seen examples of this before with Netflix crowdsourcing improvements to its recommender system, or NASA doing the same for their solar event prediction model. There are even platforms now, like Kaggle, to organize this form of open innovation process. Cross-industry partnerships are less common, but fascinating when they work. The one that can unlock a lot of value today can be between banks and telcos. The combination of their capabilities can bring financial inclusions to underserved populations, especially in emerging markets. But I must say the business model there is yet to be proven. So, let me summarize the most important takeaways from this video. A business ecosystem is a network of organizations and individuals exchanging goods and information in order to create value and ultimately to ensure mutual survival. To set up an ecosystem, the first step needs to be a shift in mindset from an exclusive focus on competition towards more cooperation. This is what we call the co-petition mindset. Then the second step is to connect with the right ecosystem partners, either horizontally with competitors, vertically with suppliers and customers, or with other complementary players from different industries.
We are reaching the end of this module and therefore the end of the course. But before we conclude, we have another highlight for you. We are very happy to welcome here Ralph Dreismeyer. He's a senior partner from our London office and he's BCG's global leader of our technology advantage practice. Ralph, welcome. Very happy to have you here. So Ralph, we'd like you to share with us themes around digital transformation, right? In our earlier discussion, we have talked about what it takes to have successful digital transformation. But from your practical experience point of view, what are the elements that companies are employed to have successful digital transformation?
Yeah, thank you, CF. So clearly, the good news is that every company in this world will, at some point over the next few years, and hopefully they have started already, go through these digital transformation that we've just heard so much about. The biggest levers for success, which at the same time also the biggest challenges, are threefold: speed, scale, and value. When it comes to speed, it's simply about moving the dial in terms of delivering new ideas, new customer experiences, new product ideas in a much, much faster way. That is faster by a factor of 2 or 3 compared to where the company works on at the moment. Scale is the challenge to what you do in isolation in digital labs to make it available across the organization, make everyone in your organization to work agile. And then there's value. And I think it's fair to say that the question of what is the value of digital, this question is still out there and needs to be proven over and over again.
So I like it. Speed, scale, and value. Makes a lot of sense. Which among these 3 elements do you think is the most difficult for companies to work on?
Generally speaking, they're all very difficult. Very, very difficult. But I would say, based on my experience, having worked with many companies across many industries, scale is potentially the most challenging one. Because most companies are able to deliver something quicker once they created a digital app environment, where they separate the business and the teams out, and they can run in a very particular way and fashion. On the value side, the value proofs are there, but pointy, they are not there overall. But scale is the real challenge. How can I do and deliver the change that I've applied to a very limited set of people and a very small environment of a part of a company? How can I scale it up to thousands or 10,000s or sometimes even 100,000s? How can I make 100,000s of people work agile? That's the biggest challenge. And that is the challenge that most incumbents face and that they have to somehow address in order to become digital leaders.
So since you mentioned the incumbents and you have worked with many of them to undergo this digital transformation, can you give us an example of a company that have successfully done this and what were their secret sauce?
Yeah. So I'll give you one example which is in a particular area of digital transformation that I'm sure you've discussed before, which is around customer journeys. So reimagining customer experiences, in particular in the B2C world, but also increasingly in the B2B world. These customer journeys normally start as we're doing a project by delivering change in a different way. That's a project team, but a project team that looks very different. It's no longer a project team that works with certain parts of the organization. It's a project team that comprises almost all functions of the organization. IT, legal, finance, operations, marketing, product management. And these projects, once they are set up and facilitated by agile coaches, run at a very, very fast way. Successful organizations, and one of my clients has done it very successfully, they have not stopped the project team once the project was over, but continued to run this team as a permanent team, as the future structure of the organization. And as a result, we're able to scale it up significantly, very, very fast, versus their competitors who still were working it in project mode.
Great, Ralph. Thank you very much for sharing your practical, insightful experience on digital transformation.
Thank you.
There you go. It's indeed a highlight.
Where does your company stand in its digital transformation along the different building blocks you have seen in this module? Perhaps you have already established a new agile way of working, but you might struggle to anchor data and analytics capabilities in your organization. Or you have designed new digital customer journeys, but you did not manage yet to find your new digital growth. Every company is different. It has its specific challenges, its legacy, and its opportunities. That's why there is no one-size-fits-all approach here. The framework we have outlined is not a step-by-step cooking recipe for digital transformation, but it is intended to give you an overview of the key ingredients to succeed. So let me do a quick recap of those key ingredients. We have seen that in a world of fast technological evolution and unpredictability, the rigid approach to strategy making, with its 3 to 5 years planning cycle, is dead. It needs to be replaced by a much more adaptive approach, tailored to the respective business environments a company is acting in. Then we have looked at how a company can digitize its core. The key was to start from the customer's point of view, not from the process. This way, you will be able not only to provide enhanced customer experience, but increase efficiency of the operations at the same time. After looking at the core, we saw how difficult it is for a company to explore new growth options. if a company does not manage to constantly reinvent itself, it is likely to be disrupted. The challenge is to find the balance between running the core business and innovating, getting the right level of what we have called ambidexterity. Practically speaking, a business can either switch between exploring and exploiting, do both of them at the same time but in different divisions, or tap into an external source of innovation. We have also introduced 4 enablers as foundation for a company's digital transformation. We started with Agile at Scale as a way to completely reinvent our ways of working. Then we saw how to build real data and analytics capabilities beyond the popular myths. On technology, we have seen how two-speed IT can be a starting point to manage the legacy before becoming fully digital ready. And then the last enabler, we talked about a company's ecosystem. A company cannot and should not do everything by itself. It should have a co-petition mindset, a mix between competition and cooperation. This already marks the end not only of this module, but of the whole course. I sincerely hope you have enjoyed our discussions, our examples, and our expert interviews. Remember, when I was saying in the course introduction that digital transformation is hard, I don't want to fool you. It will still be hard even after you have taken this course, but at least now you know exactly what you need and what you should watch out for. I wish you all the best of luck in the rest of your exciting journey.
We have reached the end of our digital transformation journey. By now, you have seen the fundamental technology laws behind We have reached the end of our digital transformation journey. By now, you have seen the fundamental technology laws behind the digital transformation, as well as the economics behind the business disruption it has triggered. You have built a deeper understanding of the most impactful digital technology for our business environment today and in the future. And at last, you know the key building blocks needed for a successful digital transformation program. I hope you have enjoyed this as much as we have. Now let's go change the world.
Technological change, innovation, disruptive innovation in particular, and adapting to these changes can be quite challenging, but these are also exciting times. This type of change provides an opportunity, perhaps even a catalyst, to bring in new ideas and technology. Thank you for joining us in this course, and we hope to work with you again soon.